been a landlord for a decade, and I heard someone say the other day that we should consider banning landlords permanently. I'll be honest, I understand why people would feel that way. There are landlords who absolutely should not be landlords. There are situations where people have been ignored, mistreated, taken advantage of, dismissed, and that is not okay. But the problem isn't landlords. The problem is something else, and it's much bigger. And I think people just point the finger at the thing that's in front of them, which happens to be their landlord. So, all right, I'm gonna roll with that today. What happens if we got rid of landlords tomorrow? Let's find out. So, abolishing landlords, eh? Well, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, approximately 46 million homes are being rented right here in America. That's 34% of American households. About 47% of Americans live in apartment buildings with 5 or more units. 31% live in single-family homes. And 17% are living in duplex, triplex, or fourplexes. And most of these people are probably renting because buying a home is out of reach. So if landlords just disappeared tomorrow, renters wouldn't just magically be able to start buying homes. Most renters just can't buy a home tomorrow. And it's not because they're doing something wrong, but because housing is really expensive in most of the country. Because of the 2008 housing crash, lending got super tight. And so now if you can't afford it, you can't buy it. Banks went under nearly 20 years ago. I remember I was a realtor in California during that time. People were getting loans due to subprime lending, meaning banks were lending to people who couldn't afford the payments. And they're not going to do that again. So down payments are high. Interest rates are high. But a big issue, wages have not caught up to the cost of living. But that isn't the landlord's fault. That's just life. So if there are no landlords and renters can't buy, the next question becomes, where are these people going to live? Do they move in with family? Well, not everybody has that option. And most homes are already crowded. Do they cram multiple families into one little house? They're already doing it on the West Coast. We've already been seeing that for decades in California. I know, I was a realtor there and I saw it firsthand. Multiple families living in one property really lowers the quality of life. People having beds and closets, that's just not right. And in addition to multiple people living in one home, people are also building extra homes on their lots called granny flats or ADUs, accessory dwelling units. That's kind of like you have one property, a main house, and little tiny homes or other little homes on your property lot. California, Colorado, Phoenix, they've been doing this for a long time already. Now, if there are no landlords and homes are still expensive to buy, renters can't buy, and don't forget, not everyone wants to buy a home either, and not everybody wants to live in somebody's backyard in a granny flat, does the government then step in and provide housing for 46 million people? Well, let's talk about that. And before someone just says, we should get rid of corporate landlords, leave the mom and pop landlords alone, we need to clear something up. Most rental properties in America are owned by regular people, not big corporations like BlackRock. So when you say get rid of corporations from buying homes, many mom and pops have their small little rental portfolios in corporations or in LLCs. So when someone says ban corporations from buying real estate, what they're really meaning is ban the retired school teacher who owns a duplex. Ban the couple who saved for 12 years to finally afford one rental. Or ban the grandmother who has 3 rentals that pay for her housing and groceries. Those are the people you're eliminating. So if private citizens can't own rentals and corporations can't own rentals, then the only people left that can own rentals would be the government. And we already have a blueprint, actually, of what that looks like. It has been done before. They've tried that at large scale in the past. And a lot of people don't realize this or even remember because a lot of those projects have been demolished or remodeled and renamed and sold off. Those were entire neighborhoods of government-owned properties. But here's what happened and why those government-funded projects don't really exist anymore. Well, the funding didn't keep up with the cost of maintaining the properties. The roofs aged, the plumbing systems failed, elevators broke, heat systems stopped working, repairs didn't happen quickly. Not because nobody cared, but because it had to go through a bunch of red tape and a bunch of hoops to get fixed. Took forever. Had to pass through layers of departments and paperwork and budgets and approvals. And when repairs take months instead of days, the neighborhoods decline, the properties deteriorate. Now add in this to the mix. Public housing in the US back then was supposed to be for low income only. Not mixed income, not community integrated. It meant entire complexes and communities were all filled with people who were struggling. They were struggling financially and emotionally. When you concentrate poverty in one place, without systems, without job opportunities nearby, it creates environments where people feel stuck. Over time, crime increased, schools deteriorated, buildings were vandalized, safety issues grew bigger and bigger, and entire communities began to collapse inward onto themselves. Maintaining millions of homes. Imagine government-owned 46 million homes. Imagine what that would take to be successful. You would need fast response times to maintenance issues, consistent funding to keep the properties in good repair, human accountability to get things done, on-site management that needs to be paid for, and ongoing reinvestment into these properties to keep them on par with neighboring values. The government is not structured to be property owners. That was a long time ago, and there's a reason why it hasn't continued. But let's connect the government housing thing to what we kind of have today, which is a Section 8 voucher program. Some people say Section 8's an alternative, but Section 8 is not government-owned housing. Landlords still own the property. Private citizens still managing the property. Section 8 is just a subsidy that helps renters pay their rent. So if you abolish landlords, you're abolishing Section 8 too. So after that rant, let's take a step back and ask the question, is abolishing landlords going to solve the problem? The answer is no. Even if we built millions of homes tomorrow, there would still be renters. Think about it. People rent for a myriad of reasons. It's not just because they can't afford to buy. Some of them have debt they're paying off and they don't want the financial responsibility, even though they could take it on. Some people just don't have the down payment saved yet and they're working on it. Some of them don't want to be tied down to one place. Digital nomads are becoming a major thing right now. People are renting midterm rentals or short-term rentals and traveling across the country while they work. Some people just want the flexibility. They don't want to own a home. Renting is not a moral failure for people who can't afford to buy. Sometimes renting is just a phase of life. We will always have renters, which means we will always need someone to provide rental housing. So at the end of the day, we can say with certainty, abolishing landlords is not the solution to any problem. Because we know what the alternative is. It's government housing, and that's been proven to not be effective. As far as housing affordability, no one quite yet knows the solution. Maybe it is building more homes. Maybe it is lowering inflation, so the cost of everyday items don't keep getting higher and higher. Maybe it's reforming lending so first-time home buyers have an easier entry into the market. Maybe it's zoning reform. Maybe it's as simple as reframing our consumer mindset and learning to live with less like our grandparents did. Or maybe it's a combination of all of those things, and probably other things as well. But abolishing landlords does not solve affordability. It just removes one part of the problem that's already under strain. What actually helps is more people providing good, stable, quality housing. You know, the kind of housing people can really rely on. And if you're someone who's considering being a landlord, and you want to do it without being a slumlord, without cutting corners, and without putting yourself at financial risk, you need to start by getting yourself financially prepared. The very first step to doing this responsibly is getting pre-approved with a lender for your first rental property. And I just made a video walking you through exactly how to do that. Step by step, what documents to gather, what lenders look for, and how to avoid getting denied. And especially, how to know exactly what you can afford. I'll put the video link up here and down here in the description below. So I want to know what you think. What do you believe would actually help the housing situation in America? Please put your opinion down there in the comments below. And if you like these things, if you found value in today's video, please do all the things that really helps the YouTube algorithm push my video out to more people who need to watch it. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and ring the bell if you haven't already rung the bell so you can be notified when I do put out awesome videos so you don't miss another one. And until next time, keep building your wealth brick by brick.